Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Joanne Copeland. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, Aaron, I'm located in Melbourne, Australia. I am a 52-year-old mum of four. I have an older son who's 24. I have twins, Zali and Flynn, who are on the autism spectrum. And I have a 17-year-old daughter. So my journey has been in the world of disability began 19 years ago when my twins were diagnosed with autism. And I'll be honest, back then in Australia, it wasn't a word, and I know this may sound a little different to people in the States. It wasn't a word that I had heard a lot of. And I didn't have an iPhone, I didn't have a iPad, so I was downstairs on my laptop not a laptop, it was actually a little white box computer in a small room looking up what is this word and what does it mean. That may sound a little naive, but that's what I stepped into. And then when I read, and most of the research I was looking at from the States, I thought, okay, there's all this information that I've never heard of before. Yes, it does sound very much like my children and where they're at and what they're doing. And then that's when my journey kind of began, and I started to realize that my eldest son, who was at that point 2 years old, or maybe actually, no, I lie, he was four. I was going to have to raise these children a little bit differently. The way we acted, the way we accepted, the way we understood them, the way their minds worked, it was different. So that's where my journey began. And here I sit now, 21 years later. And as part of that journey in lockdown, I wrote a book of our story. When other people were walking their dogs over and over again, I was writing a book, and I wrote it and published it in lockdown. And for me, that book is now an Amazon bestseller. For me, that book was my journey as a mum from preconception to age 18, and what I have learnt, how I've grown, and where my children have risen and fallen, their highs, their lows, but a totally positive outcome. And it hasn't been an easy road. Oh God, no, very hard road. I raised four, but it was more like raising six children. And it's there was many rough times, many days of tears, many days of thinking, is what's going to happen to my kids? But I took on all the information I could. I took in all the advice. We did early intervention. I had four children at four different schools. I took on the fact that you are unique and you must be treated as everyone is uniquely as an individual, regardless of a disability. You must be treated as I suppose the word I'm looking for is an individual person who has their own direction. And no matter how hard it was for me to accept the fact that our road was different, the end result was going to be the same. We just had to tackle it in a different way. And we had diets we worked on. We had huge behavior issues, different for both individuals. My twins are a boy and a girl. They don't look like twins. They look like brother and sister. One was vegetarian, preferred of food. The other would mainly eat meat. Their likes and dislikes were completely different. Their interests were different. I think the only common characteristic is they're both quite artistic. Academically, he was much stronger than Flynn was much stronger than Zali. He went through our mainstream schooling program with an aid from prep right through to year 12. So that's sort of 12 years of schooling over here. And whereas my daughter, she went to grade 4 level in a mainstream program, then had to go off to a school. We have 3 levels of schooling here. So we have your mainstream, we have a special sort of what we call a special development school, and then sort of a middle road. So there's 3 different levels.
Okay.
And she went into the road of schooling where you had a smaller classroom and there was 12 people in the room, a teacher and an aide, whereas my son went down the mainstream road where there was 22 in the room and an aide coming and going when he needed it. And then not forgetting that when you're a mum of young ones on the autism spectrum, I was also a mum of 2 other very unique children who were both very bright, academically very bright. My twins were, creativity was amazing, academically not strong. So it's nourishing. Everyone's strength has always been a balance. And I wrote this story basically to share with people my journey, but also to let everyone know that you can reach a positive outcome. So here we sit now. My twins are, my son drives, he works, he has friends who accept him for who he is. My daughter is about to go for what we call our P plates over here in about 4 weeks. She's had her learner's permit for 5 years.
Okay.
And I knew it would take that long for her to get over the road. And also, she's a very well-recognised artist and has just released her website. So, yes, anyway, I'll stop talking, Aaron.
No, that's great. Yeah, so when you applied to be on the podcast, I asked what is your definition of inclusion? So you sent in equal access and opportunities, accepting all with no discrimination or intolerance. Do you want to go into a little more detail?
So, intolerance is that barrier, I think, that some people put up when they see someone who might do things a little bit differently to them. And here in our country, I've noticed a great improvement in that area, particularly in the last 5 years. I've got friends who have young children or teenagers, young adults now with Down syndrome. And I have friends who have children with sort of global disabilities. And I think we here have grown a lot, but the world's grown a lot more too.
Right.
Even recently with the Paris Olympics, I think in our country, there was as much celebration of those with a disability in the Olympics as there was with those who didn't have it. And I think as a world, we're getting better, we're getting more accepting, but there's still times where it's not like that. And that often I find predominantly will happen in teenage years. I think teenage years are the most difficult. And inclusion, I think, always needs to come with a genuine smile, with open arms, not closed arms, not barriers. I find out of my twins, it's probably my son who struggles a little bit more with the area of sort of being accepted, because he did go to a mainstream school, and he knew he was a little bit different, and he had other friends at the school who were also on the autism spectrum, but it's the teenagers who really found it a little bit harder to be as accepting. And I think that's because when they're going through their own differences growing up and trying to find themselves, there's little cliques, there's niches, and it's trying to fit into those. But we've progressed through all those areas, and now I can say he honestly has a great group of friends and a real acceptance within his own community. We live in an area of Melbourne, which is very much a leafy suburb. It's a very family orientated area. We have a lot of good schools, a lot of schools with additional support, and I myself work at a secondary school as what we call here an integration aid. So I work with those children who may have ADHD, autism, they may have Down syndrome,
Sure.
a range of conditions, and we are in the classroom with them, that extra help, making sure their programs might be slightly modified if need be, so that they can be part of the school group. And I notice it's those teenage years at the toughest. I think young children are a lot more nurturing. Your
Right.
5-year-old to 6-year-old to 7-year-olds, they see everyone as it doesn't matter what you look like, how you act, whether you're strong enough to be on this team, whether you don't understand basketball or the rules, whether you're not a team sport person. It makes no difference. But as you progress that little bit higher, and unfortunately, people start to categorize you in those secondary environments. And it's not whether you have a disability or not. It's whether you're in this clique, this group, your preferences, your interests. Um, and it's just human nature as teenagers that we naturally segregate people.
Right.
And it's how we stop that. And I think we're seeing a change, and particularly the school that I work at. It's well known. We don't have a uniform, so there's no school uniform at this school.
Okay.
You can wear whatever you want. I'm not sure in the states. Do you have school uniforms?
In the public schools, they generally do not have uniforms now.
Yes, yes. Well, here it's more common
More
that,
common.
yeah, we have primary school that have school uniforms, and in secondary schools they do. So we're at a school um, for 50 years, as long as the school's been running, there's never been uniform. So you can come and be yourself from day one. You're not
Sure.
restricted on what you have to wear. So I think for me, the raising my twins, certainly the younger years were tough. They were very difficult. My daughter, who now Zali is 21, her verbal skills are still not like yours and mine. She can't have this conversation that you and I are having now. It's too fast. It's too intense. The world, she'd be lost. She can listen and understand, but then can't reciprocate. So the process from brain to mouth is just not as quick.
Sure.
Um, but she's a very kind human being, and that's what I've noticed with both my twins. They've always been very kind. They don't say a bad word about anybody.
Yeah.
And people also will pick up on that as well as teenagers, and they can be easy targets because they are so genuinely kind. That's what I find often. People who only have autism and no other little challenges stepping in are generally really kind people, and they're innocent. They're quite
Right.
innocent. So it's how you make sure that that's kind of not taken advantage of in that secondary environment. So I think they were they were challenging years in a different way, and then finishing school from age 18 onwards, we've got that whole environment of, okay, now I'm out of the school, everything that I've known, the routine that I've known, the people that I've known, the friendships, everyone goes their own separate way. And I don't always include, um, well, I notice with my son in particular, as his friends have gone off in their different directions, gotten jobs, gone to
Right.
university, apprenticeships, finding that place um, has been another challenge again. So we've got three different stages. We've got that young, teenage, and adulthood challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm,
So I'm not sure. In the U.S. The process it's called special education. So my daughter,
mm,
when she was like early childhood, like 3 years old, I think around that age, got evaluated. So an evaluation is done
Mm.
They say yes or no, she qualifies for special education, and then there's a we call it an IEP or an individualized education program, a document that's written with goals, like accommodations, different things that follows her along in the school setting.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process like in Australia as far as like being identified, and then do they have something
So,
similar to our IEP where like a process
mm,
like that, or how does that work?
so we had a process. My twins were diagnosed at age 2 with autism, and it was those signs, particularly in my daughter. We had they started to talk, everything was fine, quite a common story. And then at age 2, I started to notice my daughter's eye contact wasn't there. She wasn't responding to her name anymore. So, but here, it took 2 years for a complete diagnosis.
Okay,
The final paperwork, seeing this person, that person. So, at age, well, I think it was 3.5, 4, they were diagnosed. And at that point, um, we were given the option of we were given what was called a CARS score, a rating level of what level of autism they technically had. I don't know how it's done over there. So my son scored a 30, whereas my daughter scored a 45 on a rating of 60. So he was in that, yes, you have autism, it's there, whereas hers was, yes, you have it, it's stronger in an aspect. Her challenges are
sure.
going to be bigger. And then we went off to preschool, and that individual IEP word, I didn't really hear that until secondary school. So
Okay,
in the primary years, from 1 to 6 to what do we start primary school? 6 to 11 or 12. We had an aide in the classroom. He was encompassed in the program, but it was the word IEP didn't really occur until
okay,
secondary years. Mm.
interesting.
Yeah, and it's and that's what you have. So where I work at my school, we have there's I don't know 45, 50 kids at the school who have a range of different disabilities, and they all have an IEP on our system,
Sure.
but only some of them are entitled to funding depending on their levels and their needs. So
Okay.
you may be sitting in a classroom, you may be recognised as having autism, but it's not strong enough, or you may have dyslexia, or but you don't sort of rate high enough for funding,
Hmm.
so you don't get any additional support other than your teacher modifying your schooling. But if there's quite obviously behaviour issues, um, your academic, your reading, your writing is just not at a strong enough level, then you get a sort of a funding pool, and you are given someone like me, an aide, to work with you in the
Okay.
classroom. Yes, so that's how
Interesting.
it's done. Whereas at
Interesting.
primary level, an aide is specifically for an individual. In our secondary level, and then amongst all that, if you can't go to a mainstream secondary school like your typical American high school, we have a special school.
Yep.
And that's probably what your daughter went to. And then we have a level below again that's called a special developmental school for those who are literally need an aid the whole time.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, we have different levels too. I think there's more than we have more levels in our system. So it's like the general education or the regular class, and then like a
Mm.
resource room. So you like pull out where you go out of the main room into a room to do some of the stuff, come back.
Yes.
Then there's a setting where you're actually in a separate room most pretty much the rest of it, all the classes, and then the the highest level is yeah there's separate schools for different things also. So yeah, we have the different levels.
Mm.
Yeah, for us it was she uses a wheelchair, has she qualifies in our system as severely multiply impaired, so like speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, a lot of different services. So
Mm-hmm.
she was segregated, sent to that separate segregation, different room down a hallway early on. We tried to get her back into like the general class. So just in the, and they weren't like doing it maliciously. It was just in the past, somebody with her level of needs, this is how we did it. So we
Yes.
just kind of started asking questions, trying to get her into the general education, and it was kind of a struggle for us. But did you? So for me, I didn't know anything about like disability. Don't remember hearing about it growing up. Did you have any
Mm.
experience with it, like disability world in Australia before you had your children?
To be honest, I have an uncle and auntie who are blind. So my mum was one of six children, and her oldest brother was had quarter sight in one eye, and then um, her younger brother unfortunately got a golden staph when he was a newborn in hospital. So his whole life he became blind, not born blind, but became blind. So I was exposed to disability in a different way,
Sure. Yeah.
not an intellectual disability, but that kind of thing. And then personally, as a young girl going to school, the only exposure I had to disability, we had a young boy who went through primary school with me and he had Down syndrome.
Okay.
That was it. The word autism, ADHD,
Yeah.
nothing. We didn't know of it. We weren't exposed to it. I'm sure it was there. It was undiagnosed.
Yeah.
I've got a friend of mine's husband. He's in his 70s, and quite obviously he has autism and has had it his whole life.
Right.
Um, but he's fine. He's worked. He's married. He's had a daughter who's also born.
Yeah.
She has autism as well. Um, they function in our society perfectly well. They have their quirks, like we all have our different quirks.
Absolutely. Yep.
But working in a secondary environment now, I we just have a lot of young individuals with different challenges, a lot of challenges, and a lot of them are behaviour based. I don't know. In my mind, it's our modern world in a sense. I don't think technology is always in our favour when it comes to some of these, your ADHD,
For
that
sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and autism for me now as a parent, it's interesting how I recognize it in others more than I ever would have, if you know what I mean, now that I
Yeah.
understand more.
Right.
But it makes me a better person. I think I've become a better person for my twins, having them in my life. It's made me more accepting. It's made me realize that you can have challenges, but you can still get there. Particularly with my daughter. So many people have said to me, or not so many, but even people close to me in my life have even said to me, "Oh, is it worth her getting her license? Could she not catch public transport for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of her life?" Yes, in Melbourne, our public transport's great, but I said, no, no. I want her to have her license. I want her to be a young woman who has that option of independence like everybody else. But I always knew it would be really hard for someone who, the way she processes things and how quick you have to be on the roads and how
Yeah.
it's not just you, it's everyone else you've got to worry about. I
Yeah.
mean, she's fine if she's just got to worry about herself,
Yeah.
but taking in everyone else's driving issues as well as her own. Flynn, my son, one of my twins, he got his license as soon as he turned 18, just after lockdown. Off he went.
Yeah.
We did a special program for them to get their learners, which I've written about in my book,
Sure.
a program that's not so visual. Here you have a learner's permit you have to
Yeah.
get, and you have that, and then you progress to your P plates, and you have your learners for 12 months, and you have to drive 120 hours on the roads, and then you're tested, and 20 of those have to be night hours. So we have what's called an L to P program with our local council. So he had a mentor. So the burden wasn't all left on me or my then husband to teach the twins both how to drive. We have an L to P program, so someone stepped in to assist doing some of the driving for us.
Sure.
When my son went for his learners, my daughter actually she I don't even know if she fully understood what she was doing, but she showed interest, and I thought, look, if I'm putting him through this program, I'm putting you through this program. Who knows? Maybe you'll actually pass. And I was blown away when he scored an 85% pass, and so did she. I was brought to tears because I thought, oh my God, all those doubters and all those people who said, who would look at her and go, there's no way she would ever drive. And step one, you've done it, you've passed your learner's permit, and you scored the exact same score as your brother. So it just opened my mind to, you're so bright in there, you can't express how intelligent you are, but you actually are. And then at that point, people said to me, oh, maybe she could just have her learners forever. I can talk and talk. I talk a lot, but I'm going to fast track it. So here we are, 5 years down the track. She's still got her learner's permit. She has driven 380 recognised driving hours, which is a huge amount, 380.
Yeah.
And on the 14th of September, she is booked in for her P plates.
Awesome.
She's gone through 3 OTs. She's had multiple different driving instructors finding the right person, and this is the determination that I've put into this for her. But she's there. I'm comfortable in the car with her. I've driven with her for 5 years. I know she can do it, but it's her proving to everyone else, and that's what she's always had to do: prove to people that she's competent enough. So we're so close.
Absolutely, well, that's great.
Mm.
So I've done a couple TEDx talks. The last one I did was I talked a little bit about how we can use empathy to be more inclusive. How do you think we can use empathy to be more inclusive?
I think empathy, for me, to take that as a word, to be more inclusive, it's taking a step back to understand. That's what I see empathy as. It's fine to see someone who may find things more challenging. It's fine to give a smile, give that feeling of, yes, you get it, but to actually maybe take time and spend a little bit of time with them, speak to them, maybe understand a bit more. Be the person in the room who approaches somebody first, and not leave it to others. Have the confidence to accept people and to not be, I suppose, naive to the fact that we are a society now that has a lot more people with recognised disabilities. We have a lot more people who need support even in our modern world. And empathy is something that doesn't come naturally to everybody. I know I've had to become stronger in that area myself over the years. You have to be a little less selfish, and maybe it's sometimes understand that you caring a little bit more can make someone's day. It can make such a difference just to approach somebody. And I find even now with my twins wanting partners in life, and looking for love, looking for a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever that may look like for either of them, finding the right people. I mean, they're both going on dating apps now, and my daughter's on a dating app for people who have a recognised disability, and state that, and are on the apps for that reason, finding people like them, whereas my son's on the mainstream platforms. And empathy just comes in many different levels. When you're young, empathy is accepting them in the playground, letting them join in on the game. In the teenage years, it's accepting them, inviting them to the parties, being that one who says, yeah, I know Flynn's got autism. I know when he's at the party, sometimes he'll do something a bit out there, but hey, that's cool. It's all right, He's going to be the first on the dance floor. His dance moves are pretty wild, but that's okay. So, and then as they become adults, empathy is in the workplace, and that's where we've found the challenges that I think the challenges in our country are in the workplace.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter is going to be Cece is her name. She's going to be she'll be 22 in October, and that's when school ends. So that's when you can't be in like the public school anymore. So yeah, the beyond that is kind of a scary place here too. So some of that's kind of similar probably.
So what age, sorry, did you say? She's
She's 21 now. She'll be 22 in October. So that's when
Oh, okay. So the education ends at that point.
yeah, like the most kids go to school through 12th grade here, which is around age 18, and then there's like a
Yes.
18 to 21 program
Right.
for those kids who need some more schooling or with
Okay.
disabilities. So she's going to be aging out of that then. So
Right.
that's kind of when you like. Well, we're already working trying to get some into the workforce, but there's just a lot less supports in that than even the school stuff. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
kind of scary here too.
It is, and I think for me here, my son, when he turned 18, he went off and did what we call a TAFE course. So you go to,
Okay.
it's not a university, it's a TAFE, and he did carpentry and
Okay.
carpentry
Sure.
and what's the other word? Sort of furniture making.
Okay.
He's really good at that kind of thing. But that went for maybe a period of 6 months. Then after that, he,
Yeah.
he was forced into the workplace and trying to find something.
Yeah.
It took him 6 months. And what he ended up finding was not in that area. He's doing landscaping.
Yeah.
But we found someone who's accepting, and I talked to the employer.
That's awesome.
And we have government programs here where there's people will touch base with your son as he's going through his first 12 months of work.
Sure.
And there's been issues at work. We've had chat to his bosses, and they've said, "Oh, he said a few things that he doesn't. We don't think he
Right.
really understands, or how can we explain this?" It took a while to find that.
Yeah.
Whereas my daughter, as she went off and did a 2-year sort of certificate one in work education, and she's doing sort of part-time work at a high tea venue, and has got her art business, which she designs jewelry and sells. She's been an artist since she was age 7, so has exhibited as far as India with her work and
Okay.
around Australia, sort of
That's
paint,
awesome.
drawing, and sculpting. But it's recently diversified into the jewelry,
Nice.
which is jewelry design, which is another way to her creative mind's very strong. So, which is common with young individuals who have autism. They have amazing creativity.
That's great. Is
Mm.
there anything that you want to share that we haven't discussed?
Um, I suppose I would like to. I would like to think one day in our world, maybe in the not too distant future, that a young person with a disability could connect internationally somehow. Like, for
Mm,
example, Australia and America connected, and we had programs that my son could come to your country, and he could do what other young individuals do, which is he's
sure.
got many friends who are heading off now to study it in Europe for 6 months, and
Yeah.
but he can't, because I don't trust the world
Right.
with him on his own. He'd need a friend.
Yep.
It would be lovely if we had programs that stepped out of our own country even, and families who would support each other in that way, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
government bodies that recognize that these young individuals are now they want to do what everyone else does, like my daughter wanting to get her license. That would be amazing. I don't know how, but that I would love to see something like that, a more worldly acceptance of disabilities, less worry about conflict and that kind of thing, but
Right.
accepting people on
Yeah.
a global basis.
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
Mm.
Well, this is my final question that I ask everybody, but I'm not sure if you guys do you know what spam is?
Yes, we do.
Do you eat it? Yes or no?
I did as a child,
Okay.
and my children have had it, but it's not a regular one on our menu. Is
Gotcha.
it a regular one on yours?
Not regular. So I live in Austin, Minnesota, is where they make spam at Hormel's. So that's why I'm asking all my guests. I had it this summer. We had a guest from out of town, so we fried some up for him, but it's not a regular staple here either. So
It is tasty though.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is. It is. We used to fry it up on the barbecue as kids, and we put a
yep.
little bit of pineapple on top. Do you have
There you
pineapples?
go. I mean, if we can get it in the store, we don't grow them here. No.
Well, if you can get them in store, next time you do your
Yeah,
spam, put a
do that.
pineapple ring on top, fry it up, beautiful.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Where's the best place everybody can connect with you?
You can connect with me on my webpage, which is joannecopeland.com. There you can purchase my book. You can contact me for a chat, and you can also view my daughter Zali's art. And there's a link there to her recent new website where you can purchase her jewelry and help a young woman with her own business, trying to, you know, gain meaningful employment and send her art out into the world.
That's great. Thanks for being on the show today.
No, lovely talking to you. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.